No matter how obscure, just about every character has a fan base, which is where I find Nightwing to be in a unique position. He seems to be a character loved even by those with little exposure to comics, albeit not general audiences. People who were exposed to the DC universe through Young Justice, the DC animated universe, Teen Titans, or those animated movies where Grayson is always getting his ass kicked. As a kid, I was in love with the idea of Robin growing up to become a solo hero. I think the same is true for many, and that can make Nightwing a great entryway into comics, as Dick Grayson is still the most widely recognized depiction of Robin, regardless of whether the average person can tell you Robin's real name. Where other characters could easily inhabit their own separate bubble, he could not exist in his current state without the interconnected universe he lives in. He is the first addition to the Bat family, a founding Titan, and a legacy character inheriting the Nightwing mantle from Superman. Rest in peace, Superman's cousin Vanity. Not to mention the efforts over the past few years to push the former Boy Wonder further into the spotlight, with him being at the center of most of the recent universe-wide events, even if the character has certainly had his low points. Having said that, I will admit that sometimes I do wonder if he's lost his edge over the years, and to whether his status as the one guy alive that every other crime fighter trusts has eclipsed his actual personality, to the point where it can be unclear why he has that status at all, besides the obvious nepotism. So what is it that people find so admirable, both fans and other characters in universe, so much so that he was deemed too important to be killed off in Infinite Crisis, leading Superboy to kick the bucket instead? Not the only time he's cheated death. Who is he outside of his role within the wider DC universe? How do those traits inform that role? Who is Dick Grayson? I could start by talking about his origin story. I could talk about how he was able to heal from the trauma of losing his parents in a way that his mentor was unable to. But my favorite thing about Dick Grayson is something that not enough people discuss, which is that he sucks, in his eyes at least. As much as some adaptations and even comics, especially released throughout the mid to late 2010s, have emphasized his sense of humor to the extent where he can come across as rather carefree, that isn't how I would generally describe him. I believe this interpretation stems from his roots as a performer, said to be the greatest acrobat in the world. He makes death-defying stunts look easy. However, like an actual performer, he is not only acutely aware of the job's risks, but also of how much better he could be. To call him a perfectionist would be an understatement, and Dick's tendency to punish himself simply for being human is very much on display from the end of his time as Robin onwards. So that's where I'd like to start, as opposed to covering all 44 years he spent in the pixie boots. He and Bruce are no longer inseparable, and this is clear from the very first issue of the New Teen Titans, which ran for 16 years, from the pre-Crisis continuity all the way to the year Nightwing's solo ongoing began, making it Grayson's most formative period. Here we see that his attempts at escaping Batman's shadow are an equal part also an attempt at proving something to himself. In the 5th issue, when Raven explains why she summoned the Titans to fight Trigon, Dick isn't sure what he brings to the table, despite the team having just defeated one of Trigon's monsters thanks to his leadership. It only worsens over time, to the point where it becomes a nuisance for the people around him. His training sessions are spent mentally torturing himself, telling himself he isn't good enough, whilst shutting out those who try to help. When he and Starfire get together, which he was already hesitant about because it seemed unprofessional, he doesn't find it easy to be upfront about his feelings. As Robin, he has been taught to separate himself from his mission and only follow his head. It's only natural that this would put a strain on his relationship with the Princess of Tamaran, where people live by their emotions. Funny that this is the guy people call a ladies' man. After over 30 issues, he eventually begins to consider quitting the team, until his eventual realization in issue 39 that what he needs to quit is being Robin. This is a couple of issues after the Titans crossover with Batman and the Outsiders, where Dick not only officially ends his partnership with Bruce, but finally gets the chance to prove himself that he's been waiting for. Dick is visibly self-conscious throughout. Every comment Bruce makes feels like an attack, but it also becomes clear that, although he'll never match Batman's fanatical obsession, there is one area of expertise in which the world's second greatest detective has Batman beat, and that is leadership. There is nothing more satisfying than the moments where he snaps before taking charge, as the Batman merely waits and watches. Once all is said and done, Bruce even commends Dick on how far he's come. It is the farthest thing from unusual to see Bruce tell Dick how proud of him he is. But Dick is a performer. He seeks applause, stemming not from egotism, but from a lack of self-worth, which goes hand in hand with his selflessness, although the two are not necessarily the same. He has always defined himself by his relation to others, as a member of the Flying Graysons, Batman's sidekick, the leader of the Titans, and even as the protector of Bloodhaven. There isn't a lot of distinction between Nightwing and his civilian life, where Superman puts on a mild-mannered performance as Clark Kent, and Bruce Wayne puts on a scary performance as Batman. Even his solo outings feature an ever-changing supporting cast. The same is true for his rogues gallery, if you could even call it that, and his day job. The city he protects even lacks a consistent identity. In its original depiction, Bloodhaven was Gotham's darker sister city, not as welcoming of colourful costumes and gimmicks. Then it was blown up. When DC Rebirth reintroduced the city, it was a bankrupt whaling town turned tourist trap, having gambled its future on casinos. And now, Bloodhaven is the home of the Titans. Or at least it was when I wrote this. Now they're moving back to New York, although I assume it's only temporary. I don't consider this inconsistency to be a good thing, as it makes Nightwing comics hard to recommend, knowing how many runs simply discard what the previous introduced. But this is how the book has been for nearly 20 years and only solidifies my point. Dick doesn't have his own daily planet crew. The only loved ones of his that actually stick around are fellow heroes. This line of work is the one piece of stability he has in his life. I imagine it's why the most noteworthy progression he's received in the last 40 years has been on a team, as well as why he tends to thrive in a team setting, and can rally a crowd of heroes possessing infinitely more power than himself. His life is built on his ability to watch another's back instead of his own. There's a level of trust between Dick and his teammates which they may not always share with his mentor, though he can still mimic Bruce's assertiveness. In issue 6 of Teen Titans Volume 3, when the Justice League members are giving the younger generation of Titans shit, they only agree to leave once Nightwing steps in and tells them to mind their own business. And in issue 57 of Justice League Volume 4, guess who gets the Legion of Doom to fall in line? It's why to many he's the quintessential older brother figure, the one to teach Tim how to be Batman's partner, the first person other than Bruce to earn Damian's respect. Dick is a less effective leader when treating it as nothing but a job, as something less personal. In Outsiders Volume 3, he goes into it with the intent of doing exactly that, following the disbandment of the Titans in the wake of Donna Troy's death, in order to avoid growing emotionally attached in the way he'd become to the Titans, and it brings out the worst in him. He goes out of his way to distance himself from the rest of the group, who, over the course of the series, grow very close. This is the same guy who was shocked to find out Batman hadn't told the Outsiders his secret identity. Here, his only priority is the mission. He'll threaten Superman with kryptonite if need be. In issue 16, Roy Harper even says, "You've become the man who raised you." Actually, anytime he begins to pick up Bruce's worst traits, a friend is quick to call it out. Nightwing Volume 2, issues 107 to 115 show him joining the Mafia and training Deathstroke's daughter, all in a plan to seize control of Bloodhaven's criminal underworld and solve the city's corruption from within, as well as keep supervillains like Slade out of the city. But was it worth telling Tim to forget they ever knew each other? Was it worth painting a target on his back? In issue 117, Bruce himself is the one to tell Dick off, saying he can't excuse Dick for losing sight of his own life's value. There's issue 150, where Dick stays up for 4 days straight, tirelessly searching for Two-Face. He becomes so desperate that he interrogates a criminal by dousing him in honey to lure over a group of hungry rats. Dick's tone of voice begins to resemble the one Bruce puts on when wearing the cowl, which Barbara is quick to take note of. The Grayson series follows Dick as a spy on a mission to infiltrate the espionage group Spiral after faking his death. Naturally, some of his brothers are not happy when the truth is revealed. Not only do Jason and Tim consider it a betrayal, but never did they expect Dick to be the one responsible. Dick has a history of self-destructive decisions, enough to rival his dad, but when one gushes about Nightwing, you're bound to hear something to do with Dick being less obsessive and emotionally stunted than Bruce. This doesn't make it untrue, though it's clearly not a case of Grayson always being happy or never making decisions that disrupt his well-being and relationships. The fact is, Dick has a lot more in common with his dear old dad than he'd care to admit. It's just that where Batman may thrive in the darkness, Nightwing fights to ensure that it doesn't consume him. His worst moments are just that. And while Bruce is undoubtedly selfless, his selfless actions are not without a personal agenda. He is specifically trying to prevent others from suffering the way he did. Dick isn't. It's just about helping people, about catching them when they fall, because it's all he's ever known. I called heroism the one piece of stability in his life, the one thing that has remained consistent not only throughout his nearly 30 years of solo stories, but also his 80+ years of existence. In a way, it's perfectly in line with Grayson's incompatibility with a world separate from the sprawling, interconnected DCU, along with his role within that universe. For better or worse, it sets him apart from many. It might be why his solo title has endured for so long despite its ups and downs, where other characters haven't had the same luck, even those also closely connected to DC's cash cow. And for all of my problems with the Nightwing solo series, I appreciate the decision over the past couple of years to frame Dick's newfound chipper attitude as character growth, which the run released as a part of DC's All-In initiative seems to build upon. To answer the question, who is Dick Grayson? He's a performer, a leader, and above all else, a protector. He has been a creature of the night, and looks up to the Man of Steel, though in truth, he is a flesh and blood boy turned to man, striving to provide others with the safety net he has always dared to fly without. Still, he'll never be Superman's cousin Van Zee, the true heir to the Nightwing mantle,